Hey you, welcome to my channel, Year and the Day. My name is Jenny and in today's video I will be going over some seasonal decks for spring and summer. To be completely honest with you, I had a bit of a rough week, meaning that my energy was low and so was my mood. So today I just felt like sitting down, wearing my comfy crochet sweater and just playing around with some beautiful tarot and oracle decks. I honestly did not really take a long time preparing for this video. I just stood in front of my tarot cabinet and pulled out some decks instinctively. I also do not really limit myself to working with very specific decks for each season. Usually I just follow my emotions and pick a deck accordingly. But after the long dark winter months, it is definitely nice to move away from darker, moodier decks to bright and colorful ones. Now that we are entering the season with longer days and singing birds everywhere and the first colors in flowers and trees showing themselves. So let's start with some decks that capture spring for me. Now, a lot of these decks I have already shown in other videos and I really don't want to bore you with repetition. So apart from showing the decks, I will also just do some spontaneous deck pairings, which is one of my favorite things to do. Let's start with an oracle deck that is perfect for spring. And for me, that is the Seasons of the Witch Ostara Oracle. You will probably have seen these decks around and know that there are now 8 decks in this series, one for each Witch's Sabbath. Now 8 decks is a bit too much for me, so I decided to pick 4 of the decks fitting each major season and work with them that way. And for me, the Ostara Oracle is the perfect match for spring. I love the soft colors and the beautiful backs and holographic details. And as you can see, the deck features bunnies and eggs or Easter eggs, so that really fits the season well. So that is the Seasons of the Witch Ostara Oracle. And I will leave this one out because this is an oracle deck that I would love to pair with a lot of decks in spring. And we can try a few of those pairings. But let's start with a deck pairing that I love to use throughout spring and summer. And that is the Essential Oils Healing Deck and the Dreaming Way Tarot. The Essential Oils Healing Deck is not really an oracle, but I modified it in a way that now makes it one of my favorite spring and summer oracle decks. Originally, the cards hold a bunch of symbols relating to the specific use of essential oils. But for me, the name of the plant and the keywords were enough to make this a beautiful oracle deck. So I just decided to chop off those symbols and have the artwork stand out just a bit better. The watercolor style of the illustrations combined with all these fresh colors really remind me of spring and summer. And it's a deck that I love to start using in early spring. when there is just enough of winter lingering to make it all feel a bit endless. And getting this deck out just reminds me of what is to come, and to just hang in there for a little longer, because before we know it, we will be in this season where everything is thriving again. And one of the decks I love to pair with the Essential Oils Healing deck is the Dreaming Way Tarot. This is also a deck that I slightly modified by chopping off the borders on 3 sides and only leaving the titles at the bottom. And again, we have that soft watercolor art style with those vibrant, fresh colors. The greens, the oranges, and the yellows. This deck really feels like a breath of fresh air to me. And I feel like these two just really make a very, very beautiful combination. And when pairing decks, for me it is first of all a visual thing. Do they flow well together? Do the colors flow and match? Do they complement each other? But even if all of that is happening, a pairing can still not really work. Because on top of the visual aspect, there can also kind of be a conversation between the decks. And for some reason that I often just cannot explain, it works so much better with some combinations than it does with others. And it's just the small details of the color green, for example, that flow so beautifully, and then that combination of the wand and the cinnamon sticks. And it's just always so lovely to look for those little stories within the cards, and especially when pairing decks. For example, here we have Peppermint, Energizes and Invigorates, with the 10 of Swords and the 2 of Cups. So for me, this would mean when feeling like that 10 of Swords and just absolutely floored and weighed down, it is good to focus on the connections around you that bring you joy and support. So this is one of my all-time favorite deck pairings, and it's the Essential Oils Healing deck and the Dreaming Way Tarot. And I always love to start using these in early spring, and I use them all throughout the end of summer. Another deck that feels like spring for me is the Tarot of the Witch's Garden. First of all, it comes with this great extensive guidebook that I really love using with the deck. And then we have the deck itself. So it's a bit ironic that the first card on top shows pumpkins and red leaves and has much more of an autumn vibe. But for me, this deck really feels more like spring. Now there are quite a number of decks available that have a little bit of a whimsical and enchanted forest or witchy vibe to them. But I didn't really like any of them enough to get. But as soon as I saw this deck, I knew that this would be the one to kind of fill that specific category within my collection. I think the artwork is really beautiful. And I'm kind of trying to find the right words to describe why this is a really spring deck for me. But I think it's just the whole theme, a witch's garden, that connection to earth and growth and nature. And just really that sense of being outside in a green and lively world really for me feels a lot like spring. And this is actually a deck that I would like to start pairing with the Seasons of the Witch Ostara Oracle. I haven't tried these two out together, so let's just get a feel for it. So I feel like the color schemes really work very well together, although the art styles are very different. But I don't know if I really feel this one. Another deck that feels like spring for me is the Victorian Fairy Tarot. And this one is very new in my collection. This was a Kickstarter a few years ago and I finally got in my copy this last February. This deck was originally published mass market, but has been out of print for a while now. So I was very happy when the creators decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign to re-release this deck. Unfortunately, there were some issues with the printer and it was quite a long wait, which I never really mind because it is, after all, Kickstarter and you are not paying for a already available product. What was a bit of a bummer that the image quality was a bit of a letdown, and also my bigger sized version of the deck was missing the 10 of Swords card. So I am expecting a replacement in the mail soon. For now, I have been using this copy of the deck, and even though normally I would rather not work with a deck that is incomplete or missing one or several cards, in this case I kind of made an exception. It is such a whimsical deck and I love the whole vibe. This illustration style really reminds me of children's book from my childhood and it just brings a lot of nostalgia with it, and for that alone I really love it. It is not per se a style that I would have several decks of, but again I really love to have certain decks representing certain styles or emotions within my collection, and I am very happy to have this one representing that childhood nostalgic feeling. I also feel like this could very easily be a summer deck, but it also feels like a lovely deck to start using in early spring to kind of make that transition from the dark winter months to the lighter months ahead. And that is the Victorian Fairy Tarot. Last one within the spring category is the How to Be a Wildflower deck. Again, this is also a deck that I will probably use all the way through summer as well. But it is just such a positive and bright and happy deck that I really love using it from the start of spring onwards. I've shown this one in my videos many times before because I just think it is a lovely deck with lovely production quality, but it's really, really affordable, or at least it was when I got it. And you basically get 78 cards times 2. Because in this deck we have the illustrated sides of the cards. And then on the backs we also have illustrations, but we have a little affirmation or a quote. And to me this is just such a happy, bright, positive deck. I really do not mind to go to deep places with my tarot and oracle decks, but sometimes you just need a bit of sunshine and a bit of a pick-me-up. And I actually would like to see if maybe this one pairs a bit better with the Tarot of the Witch's Garden than the Ostara Oracle. I actually love this combination a lot better, and it is kind of hard to explain what I'm exactly looking for because these art styles are completely different. There's not really even any relation to the themes of the deck, but somehow these two sing more together. And what I mean by that is that there are certain synchronicities or just little details that really kind of create these little sparks together. For example, for these two, first of all, we have two kings, the King of Swords and the King of Cups, with a quote in the middle. And the quote says, "We need the tonic of wildness." And I really love that kind of tension between the world of emotions and deep feeling and the rational thinking. And the quote that kind of bind these cards, or the message for me, would be that sometimes it really is okay to step away from that rational thinking and really root yourself in your emotions and in your senses and try to let go of control a little bit more. And again, in this case, we have the Six of Cups and the Chariot between the quote, "You were born with wings," and with the Six of Cups rooting in childhood and nostalgia, and the Chariot inviting you to soar and fly. It just really makes a lovely combination. The Ten of Cups and the Moon between Stay Wild at Heart. And here I would say that these cards invite you to stay connected to your wild side, stay connected to your intuition, and even though there might be stability and you feel very established within your situation, it is always good to not settle down too much and to stay wild at heart. So even though I had not really expected these two to make a good pairing, I actually really enjoy these two together. And that is the Secrets of the Witch's Garden Tarot and the How to Be a Wildflower deck. And those were some decks that I associate with spring and love to start using in early spring. Because I am quickly losing daylight, I think I will have to show the summer decks tomorrow. So where my spring decks were more about all of that newfound freshness and brightness after the long winter months, summer is all about warmth and abundance. And let's start with the Seasons of the Witch Litha Oracle. So for me, this oracle perfectly embodies those warm, abundant summer months. And when standing in front of my tarot cabinet and just going over decks that for me fit summer best, I really was leaning towards all those colorful and happy vibes. So let's take a look at some of the tarot decks that feel like summer to me. Let's start with the Sleepwalker Tarot. So I have tried quite a few decks in the past revolving around fairy tales. Because in theory, I would absolutely have to love those decks. But in reality, I always feel a bit overwhelmed by the amount of stories behind the pictures. And I ended up not really using any of those decks. So for me, the Sleepwalker Tarot is kind of my fairy tale deck. And it is not because the cards depict actual fairy tales, it's just that the cards really have that fairy tale vibe, full of castles and princes and princesses. This is not necessarily a deck that I see a lot on TarotTube, but I actually really enjoy it. As you can see, it is an RWS clone, and I do not feel that it really tries to bring a lot of new things to the table, except of course for the fact that all the characters in this deck have their eyes closed. Hence the title, the Sleepwalker Tarot. But for me, it's really those very bright and happy and vibrant colors that really make it perfect for those summer months. And that is the Sleepwalker Tarot. And let's throw another oracle in the mix with the Roots and Wings Oracle deck. This oracle deck feels very light and airy to me, probably because of the white space surrounding these soft watercolor images. It took me a while to kind of get attached to this oracle. I've had it for quite a while now, but now I think it is just a lovely deck to pull out in that warm summer season. And maybe it would be fun to see if this one maybe pairs well with the Sleepwalker Tarot. So even though these art styles are completely different and even the vibe or the mood of the decks is not at all alike, for me this is a pairing that unexpectedly works very well. And 3 cards like this is a beautiful example, where we have the Knight card in the middle with that black and grey, moving into a slightly blue tone with the black and grey of the Five of Cups. And then on the other hand, the Four of Cups with the figures facing away from each other. And of course we have the little blue detail over here that beautifully flows over to this one. And it's just little details like that that I really love to see in a deck pairing. So not at all a deck pair that sounds like a logical choice in advance, but one that works surprisingly well for me. And that's the Roots and Wings Oracle deck and the Sleepwalker Tarot. Another deck that really feels like summer to me is the Heartscape Tarot. And it already starts with the box. I have the second edition, and for this one it was the Sun card that was the inspiration for the packaging. I also absolutely love the backs of these cards with this lovely cloudy sky. And of course the amazing edges. As you can see, this is a landscape deck. This is the only landscape deck in my collection. And it's also the deck that reminds me most of Studio Ghibli movies. The whole art style is just so calming, and a lot of the scenes just feel very warm, and they are outside in beautiful landscapes, and there's a lot of sunshine and beautiful skies. So yeah, this whole deck feels like a bright and warm summer's day to me. And that is the Heartscape Tarot. I also picked up the White Newman Tarot. My copy of this deck has gold gilding because I actually got the limited edition from Liminal 11. I absolutely love the art style of this one. I know I keep saying that about all my decks, but that is just such an important part of tarot for me. It is the art, it is the visuals. And I am not knowledgeable enough about art to really articulate well what exactly it is that I like. It's just a very intuitive thing for me. I just look at it and then I either like it or I do not like it. And I really only tend to get decks that I just immediately love the look of. And again, it is kind of a combination of the whole vibe of this deck and the colors that really makes me feel like it's a summer deck to me. Maybe also because it kind of seems to be set in a summer season, and we have a lot of people seeming to be in a warmer climate. So that is also, I think, an aspect for me that kind of really makes me feel like this is a deck for the summer season. And that is the White Newman Tarot. And I couldn't resist also including the Flow Tarot. The Flow Tarot is a photography deck about water in all its forms. So even though there are definitely cards in this deck that are all about winter and ice and snow, I think the association with water is just strongest in the summer season. In those summer months, it is so much more likely for me to be around water, to either swim or hike or enjoy the smell of the rain. Those are all things that really go hand in hand with that summer season for me. So, of course, I wanted to include the Flow Tarot as well to my summer decks. And to have that connection to nature included in this video, I also chose to include the Little Bird Tarot. This one was created by Shanna D, who has a channel here on YouTube as well. And Shanna did a lovely job collecting all these vintage beautiful illustrations of birds and collecting them in a tarot deck. And I was kind of thinking of decks that I could pair this one with. And I think I might have one in my collection. This is a deck called Healing Plants, and it contains 50 botanical cards. When I got this deck, it was quite affordable, and it is not exactly an oracle deck, but much more a deck filled with beautiful vintage looking illustrations. And on the backs of the cards we have some information about the plants. And you could very easily use this deck as an oracle by focusing on those symbolism keywords that are on each card. When using a plant deck, I usually go to that Essential Oils Healing deck, but I think this one might pair really well with the Little Bird Tarot. Now, as you can see, there aren't really any clear keywords on that Healing Plants deck. But for the visuals alone, I feel like this is a very lovely pairing. And that is the Healing Plants deck and the Little Bird Tarot. And last but not least, the Kawaii Tarot. Now, if summer is all about bright colors and abundance, I don't think I could leave out the Kawaii Tarot. Now, this might just be the most hysterical deck within my collection, and I mean that in the best possible way. Whenever I take this deck out of the box, I almost can hear the music that is playing in this colorful and super busy world with all these lovely cute creatures and the landscapes, and the whole scenery of it is just absolutely delightful. It's just such an incredibly happy deck. I could sit here for hours and hours to just chat about decks and showing decks and combining them together. But for now, let me just leave it at this. I hope you enjoyed going over some of my spring and summer decks together. And I hope I was able to capture the spring and summer vibes within my choices. Feel free to let me know in the comments what your favorite seasonal or spring or summer decks are, because I would love to hear it. And with all of that being said, I wish you all a lovely rest of your day or night, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!